name's Heather Jackson Peña, and I'm an alum from the year 2000 Y2K. The computers didn't crash. We all survived. That was an exciting time. I'm sure many of you remember. I'm excited to be here today because I found occupational therapy at Sandy Spring because of Eduardo and his wife Jody. Which is Eduardo here? Yes, right there. Because of him and his wife. Here we go. I got a mic. Okay. And so I'm excited to come back to share a little bit of my passion related to occupational therapy. But before we actually start the slides, I want to give like a promo about OT. This is everywhere I go, I try to promote my profession because it's often very much misunderstood. Does anybody know what OT is? How many? Okay. Occupational therapy, yeah. So people often think that we counsel people who are unhappy in their jobs. I know what OT is. You help people in their jobs. Well, that's possible. That could be a part of what we do if we had a client or a patient that was unhappy in their work, right? But that's not the scope of OT. The reason why the founders of this profession use occupation as this term to label what we do is because we deal with what occupies a person's time. And why that's important is because, especially after an illness or injury or health setback in particular, we use the things that occupy a person's time to sort of get them back into participating and engaging in life and the things that they want and they need to do. So I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I have a bachelor's of science in health science, and I had an entry-level program. I got my master's in OT, and then I got my clinical doctorate in occupational therapy. So I'm really committed to OT. Right now I have a private practice in Rockville, Maryland, and I work with children and young people from mild delays or difficulties to more significant cognitive, social, physical, and behavioral impairments. I also work with DC public charter schools and educational attorneys and advocates to ensure that those students are receiving school-based OT services under the federal law. And finally, I'm an adjunct faculty member at Philadelphia University, and I teach in the post-professional doctorate program. I teach leadership there, and I'm developing their leadership coursework as well. So that's OT, and that was like a mini presentation. It's like as long as the 5-minute, and that doesn't count towards my total time. I'm going to talk about handwriting today because that's what I do a lot, right? I was like, make sure that doesn't count. I'm going to talk about handwriting today because obviously I work with children, and that's one of the main occupations that they have. And I am also breaking the rules of Ignite because I brought a student here with me today, and she'll join me a little bit later in the slides to share her experience with handwriting. So I'm ready to officially start the slides. Okay, so much of the argument you will hear these days about handwriting is, we want to preserve this art form, this maybe dying art form. And my case is much different. I want to make the case that should have been made a long time ago, which is because science. Because science tells us that handwriting is important in literacy. Now, I love technology. My iPhone is in my pocket. I'm really upset they don't have service in here. I love Apple, so if anyone wants to accuse me of hanging on to this antiquated form of technology, they would be wrong because I embrace technology, but I also know that handwriting is more important for literacy than typing. So really early on, kids start, this is a picture of me, to scribble. They label people through scribbling, and they label cars through scribbling, whether or not we can tell what it is. And we know that those early scribbles that they're showing us are building they're building blocks of reading. And we know that because of what the literature says. It tells us that if a child types a letter, that only the motor part of their brain is activated. But when they write the letter, the motor and the reading parts of their brain are activated. And that tells us that the brain is changing through practice. That they're actually building a relationship with those letters. Now, this is really important because it's not just for children, it's also for adults. And what we see is when we look at university, there's a research about university students where they took handwriting, students who were using handwriting for note-taking and typing for note-taking. And when they assessed them on fact-based stuff, they performed equally. But when they had to answer questions about the content and conceptualize, the typing students performed far worse than the handwriting. And that's because the handwriting, as you're writing, you're processing and you're retaining that. And that memory is much more important for fluency of writing, but also for memory. So sort of an example of this would be if I asked you to imagine writing the letter K. Well, you could imagine writing in all the different forms that I have here, right? So we have cursive, we have pen, we have pencil. It's a sensory experience, very much different from the letter A that you might write. You could tell the difference. You could even do it with your eyes closed. And you could even feel the way the marker moves across the page. But if I asked you to type the letter K, well, the only difference between typing the letter K and typing the letter A is the position on the keyboard. That's it. There's no other experience. And so we know that that type of memory is not as strong as the sensory-based handwriting memory. So now I'd like to introduce you to Caroline. Caroline is a former client of mine, and her mother contacted me in the summer before 3rd grade because Caroline was avoiding writing. And Caroline has what's called an essential tremor. And basically, it just requires her a lot more effort to do fine motor activities. When I met her, I found that she was exhausted from the start and stop of print writing. Start, stop, start, stop. So I introduced her to cursive, and this is what handwriting did for Caroline.
Because of my essential tremor, handwriting was always a challenge for me. It was difficult to write neatly, and my hand got tired quickly. Each time I visited Miss Heather, she taught me cursive and praying. She also gave me tools and techniques to use when my hand was becoming tired. My handwriting improved each week, along with my confidence.
Caroline, she wants to be an OT. She's going to be my boss when she grows up. She's awesome. So awesome. So what Caroline said about confidence, which I did not, I just asked her to participate, and she said confidence. The thing that she brings up about confidence is the same experience that I have with the students I work with every day. This is an example of an 8-year-old that's going to pass really quickly who was never taught how to write. And so he was, that's my son protesting the distance between us right now. Sorry about that. That student was unable to write. No one had ever taught him. And so I met him for 7 sessions. People were dictating for him. And it was so frustrating because he couldn't get his ideas out. And by the end, he was able to write on his own, just like his peers. This is not a wonderful handwriting sample unless you know the background of this student and the one that'll come after. And when I met them in kindergarten and 1st grade, these students were writing in symbols. Think squiggly lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines to communicate their ideas. While the rest of their peers were sharing their experiences from the weekend, they were just drawing circles. We gave them formal handwriting instruction with some visual motor support, and they were finally able to communicate the things that they love, which is really important in childhood. It's very important for the kids to be able to do the same thing that other kids are doing. So I've told you the 2 main reasons why I think we should be using handwriting, but you should know that Common Core, the standards that most states have adopted, they teach you how to compose your ideas, and they teach you about the writing process, drafting, but they do not teach handwriting. And I just told you, what did I just tell you? I just told you that handwriting is the early building blocks of reading. So we've taken that out of the equation. We sort of let kids figure out how to write those letters on their own, even though we know they need to be taught. So my case for handwriting, and what I would ask of you, especially the teachers, is never talk as fast as I am so that your students can take notes by hand. If you're using PowerPoint, especially, it's a little harder at the collegiate level, but certainly take the PowerPoint down and handwrite the notes on the board yourself, just like we all used to do, because it's actually going to support your students' memory. If you aren't in child education, you can also just choose to use handwriting throughout your week in your daily activities to continue to keep up that cognition. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.